Today I've been invited round to speak to Dennis Baker about his uncle Len, who is a celebrated war hero for liberating a small village in Italy. And this, I believe, Dennis, this all came about because someone wrote into what was then the East Kent Gazette and was asking about your uncle Len.
Indeed, this is the case, and it all started with an article which appeared in the East Kent Gazette on the 25th of May 2011, and the heading is there. Help me to search for the family of Corporal Baker. And it was sent to the East Kent Gazette by David Schomfield, a British journalist and someone who has lived in and made his home in this Italian village of San Leolino. And in here he abbreviated the background, how Len Baker led the advance party, led his platoon in 1944 and liberated this tiny village of San Leolino. Now he's a hero, great hero in this Italian village, and every year with their own war dead they commemorate the fact that Len was killed. I can tell you about that. Part of the King's Liverpool Regiment, the 2nd Battalion of the King's Liverpool Regiment. And he'd come from his previous base in Northern Ireland, where he had been in the Oxford and Bucks Regiment. But the King's Regiment were so reduced, they'd really suffered heavy losses, that the Oxford and Bucks then, this was a government Ministry of Defence decision, so it came from on high and they became the King's, and never afterwards known as the King's Liverpool Regiment. Now they went to Italy in 1943 and he was first in Piedmont, and then later they moved up to Tuscany. Well, at this time, of course, and in fact in September 1943, when the Allies landed on the mainland, the Italians then were no longer one of the Axis powers. They had, of course, been with Germany as two Axis powers in 1940, but that came to an end in 43, and they were now, I rather suspect a lot of the, well, I do know many of the Italians themselves, although they don't speak it out, they were not in favour of the dictatorship Mussolini. He'd gone, now they were the allies of Britain. And there were a lot of Commonwealth troops as well there. But leading up to that, they made their final, this is a very important date, they made their final advance on the 9th of July 1944, having moved up through Italy from Piedmont, now in Tuscany, and they were facing all the time the most sinister, the most skilled but the most cruel German regiment, the Hermann Göring Panzer Division, and who were laying mines all the time. They were retreating in the north. The Germans were in retreat everywhere. You've only to think, for instance, that not long before this we had D-Day, the D-Day landings. But of course it was on the other fronts, in Burma and in Italy, where thousands of British soldiers were sent, and Commonwealth soldiers as well. to defeat Germany in Italy. So Germany was on the retreat everywhere. 1944, in my opinion, was the critical year of the war. And it was pretty clear the Germans were not going to win. Well, on this, this fateful day, the 9th of July, they advanced, but unfortunately the platoon, Len was already commander of A company in the platoon, but in fact he then became commander of the platoon for the tragic reason that the commander, a captain, was fatally wounded. The German tanks were there, you see, the Panzers, and he was killed, and the platoon sergeant, and I can tell you more about this if you want me to, but Charles Cooper, the platoon sergeant, he was hit by shrapnel from the one of the German Panzer tanks, and he was out of action, and this left Corporal Leonard Baker commanding and leading the platoon on this final advance towards San Leolino. There were 3 villages altogether who were in very much the same position. They were ancient battlegrounds, all of them, and they were in the peaks. It's the most beautiful landscape, but all the time the Germans were laying the mines. Well, on the 16th, on the final push, when he led the platoon and they liberated San Leolino, he stood on a landmine and he was killed instantly. Now, I didn't know at the time, bear in mind I was only a boy in these years, I was 11 when the war started, and so here I am, still a mere lad in 1944, and I didn't know the whole truth until later, but in fact both of his legs were blown off, and as I've said elsewhere in my writing, it was perhaps thankful that he died instantly.
Yeah.
Now, he was buried there. The spot is known, and there are still old people now today who were there as children and teenagers at the time. They know the spot where he was killed, but he was later buried at Arezzo. It's about 30 kilometres from slightly northeast of San Leolino, the tiny village, and it's one of the biggest of the War Graves Commission cemeteries. It opened in November of that year, and his body was taken there, and there's a wonderful memorial to him, and the other memorial is, in fact, there are 2 others, if you like, but he's actually buried there, and the memorial is there with something over 2,000 Commonwealth troops buried. It's one of the really large cemeteries.
Yeah.
But he's commemorated in Sittingbourne in 2 memorials. There's one at Merston it's in the church, and it's the memorial to the dead merchant, Merston men who died in the war, and of course because the girl he married was from Merston, and after they were married, I know we were told they lived at the other end of the town, and in fact I think it was the far end of Shortlands Road. So he was then, if you like, formerly a Merston resident, and he's on the memorial. He's the second one down, Corporal Leonard Baker, as one of their...
This is going to do that now, isn't it?
Now we've got a reminder of the time.
What's also very interesting is the reason for you bringing all this up now is because this year in Italy, in this village, there's a big memorial event, is there not?
Well, that's right. Like other events, it's 70 years since some of the great battles. We know, of course, lots of us are so full of D-Day and the D-Day landings and all that happened subsequent to that. But of course, there were other fronts, and it's 70 years, so they're having especially big commemoration. They wanted me to go for some time, and because I'm the oldest living relative, I should say that my sister is the next. She's 7 years younger than me, born in 1935, and she went to Len's wedding. I can say more about it if and when there's time, but she also responded, and she's producing, well, it's a very special commemoration, and they want someone to go representing really the Baker family.
Yeah.
But we will be represented, and so will Sittingbourne. My son, who was born in this very house where we're sitting now, so he's a Sittingbourne born resident, although...
Quite literally.
Very much. His birth was certainly registered here. Christopher, and he's been a tremendous help to me, and has been in close touch with Italy and David Champel. Well, he and his wife Wendy are going out. They're getting lots of hospitality. The thing is that he's a hero in Italy, but until now, he's not been known in
locally.
Sittingbourne,
Yeah,
but he is one of Sittingbourne's great heroes.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not certainly denying that there are many other heroes in Sittingbourne, but we know a lot about Len, and we know that in one particular village, he really is their hero